A bit of background: we've been married for 22 years and we have one son, 19. Like any marriage, we've had scuffles here and there, but nothing that we haven't been able to get over. In fact, I felt we had a great marriage with great communication, mutual attraction, and a satisfying sex life. We both share a love for the outdoors, so we were constantly on the go and staying active, hiking, camping, or just taking long walks. We've always taken care of ourselves and made an effort to stay in pretty good shape because we talked about growing old together and being able to do things when we're old and gray. I work as a paramedic, and over the last 9 months, my shifts had gotten a bit turned around. I've had to work mainly night shifts and picked up a lot of extra shifts. She works as a litigation consultant and has been working from home for a little less than a year. When my wife made the transition to WFH, it wasn't her idea. Her firm actually moved towards Liquid Talent, and she told me everyone started working from home, but I remember her making a big stink about it and how she wasn't going to be able to see her clients and colleagues face to face as much, which makes building relationships and trust so hard. I remember her being strongly against it, and so much so that she was debating on leaving her work. Trust. How ironic. Remember this for later. Anyway, my night shifts made things a bit distant between us since our schedules suddenly didn't really overlap anymore. Although she'd be at home working, I'd be sleeping. When I'd be getting ready to go to work, I thought she was settling in for the night and getting ready for bed. But when we were both off at the same time or our schedules mashed up nicely, we seemed to be just fine. We were close. We played around. We had fun with each other. There was nothing out of the ordinary or anything that tipped me off that anything was going on behind my back. Our marriage felt fine. She'd talk to me about her week. She'd text me during the day while I was sleeping telling me that she missed me or she saw something funny and thought of me. She made me meals that I'd eat when I woke up, and she'd pack me lunch. Recently my brother came over to help me install a Chromecast I got through a contest at work. It happened to be a random day off I had, and my brother was in town from his shift work and I hadn't seen him in a while, so I decided to ask him for some help with this. We were having fun taking turns connecting our phones to the TV and watching videos and listening to music, just geeking around. My wife comes out from her office after she was done with work and she asks what we're doing, and I tell her that he's helping connect my phone to the TV for our new Chromecast. I ask her if she wants my brother to help her download the app on her phone so she can use it too, and she hesitates at first and looks at the TV and then looks back at me. And I'm like, it's super simple, you just have to download an app. Takes like 2 seconds. Finally she caves, but it looks like she's texting someone or going through her phone right before she passes it to my brother. At the time, I didn't really think anything of this. My brother starts going through the process of connecting her phone and getting it recognized, and she asks how long it's going to take. My brother says something like maybe 2 minutes. And she's like, okay, I'm just going to go to the washroom quick. Before she walks away, she turns back around and says, you're just downloading an app, right? And he's like, yeah. So she leaves to go to the washroom, and my brother and I are having drinks on the couch, and we're not really paying attention while he's going through these easy steps to connect the thing. Not even 10 seconds after that, he connects her phone to the screen, and as a joke he opens up her messages and there's a contact that's named just a heart emoji. He looks at me and starts laughing, thinking that he's going to find something juicy in there between her and I. I'm like, viewer discretion advised. And he starts scrolling through this thread and sees some pretty raunchy things being said back and forth, and he's calling me cheeky and a dirty dog and saying things like he didn't know I had it in me. I will say, it wasn't beyond my wife and I to say some pretty interesting things to one another while she was getting ready for bed and I was just starting my shift. So at first, I did think that this was a message thread between the two of us. But as I'm looking closer at the thread, I'm realizing that this isn't between me and my wife. At one point, she starts calling this guy Craig. At another point, there's some nudes exchanges, and let's just say that the male extremity definitely wasn't mine. My brother sees my reaction and he starts scrolling through slowly this time, trying to read whatever he can, and then realizes the same thing. My stomach dropped and my brother stopped laughing. The text basically reads something about a certain body part of Craig's being in my wife's mouth. My brother got up and handed me the phone and suddenly told me he had to go and quickly left. I didn't blame him. I got up and started videoing what I was seeing on the screen. And as I heard the toilet flush, I exited the messages and dropped the phone on the couch and quickly ran out onto our porch to make it look like I had been sitting out there the entire time. After about 5 minutes or so, she comes onto the porch and she asks me how long I've been outside for. I told her my brother, and I went to sit out there as soon as she left the living room. She looked relieved and then played it off like nothing happened and sat down next to me. I got up to walk back inside to pretend to grab another beer and saw that she had disconnected her phone from the TV and now it's just a black screen. This was eating me alive. I had to go on a quick run after that just to wrap my head around what I saw and to blow off some steam. I was also trying to think of ways I could get back on her phone again to send those messages to myself and to see just how far this really went. For some reason, I just had to see more. Later that night I come up with this BS excuse that I have to re-download the app on our phones because something went wrong with the Chromecast. She's not necessarily all that tech savvy. She usually makes me do anything techie around the house whenever it comes to the internet, or she thinks I can diagnose anything to do with the TV, the internet, or our phones. She makes me download coupon apps and little Wordle things on her phone, so I knew if I had said something like I need to re-download something, she'd likely believe me and give me the phone back. Later that night, I'm pretending to screw around with the TV before she goes for a bath. Just as she gets in the bath, I come in and I'm like, I gotta re-download this app on our phones because I accidentally unplugged something and it just fucked up everything. She looks at me a bit worried and she's like, I don't really need to be connected to it. And I'm like, it'll take me like 2 minutes. Super easy. Then you just have it on your phone and we don't have to worry about it later. She's like, I'll get out of the bath and help. And I'm like, no, you had a long day, just sit back and relax, I'll be 2 seconds. She reluctantly hands me her phone and she's looking concerned. Then she tells me to be careful and not to go through anything because she has some confidential client information on there. I kind of come back and say why she's having client conversations on her personal phone when she has something set up on her computer for that. She tells me that the system on her laptop was down for a bit and therefore she had to use her cell. Yeah. Whatever. I tell her no worries, I'm just downloading this app and then reconnecting it. She asks me if I should call my brother back and if I'm capable of doing that myself. But she says this in a way that really rubs me the wrong way. As if she's telling me that I'm weak or something, or not good enough. Either way, I felt like it was a dig at me. I tell her if I have any problems that I'll call him and I walk out of the bathroom. We've never been ones to snoop on each other's phones. Up until this moment, I felt like I never had to. We've always known the passwords to each other's phones but never once have I ever snooped or checked in on what she was doing. I've always trusted her implicitly. And yeah, I guess since she's worked from home, she's been a bit more protective of it, but I chalked it up to just work. Or that maybe work was getting a bit overwhelming so she was just playing mindless games on it to decompress. Turns out she was decompressing with someone else other than me with someone else in her mouth. Right under my nose. Right as I'm sleeping during the day or working my ass off for us in the wee hours of the morning trying to bring junkies back to life downtown. I felt like an absolute schmuck. I honestly, 100%, had no idea that anything was going on and I feel like a fool for not seeing it or even letting it happen. I had to work fast but I managed to scroll far back enough to see that the communication between my wife and Craig started last May, which was over a year ago. I screen recorded what I could so I could just go back and pause and read later and I sent it to myself via email and then deleted it from her photos/videos and her sent box. Meanwhile she's yelling at me from the bathroom asking if everything is okay because I've reached the 5-minute mark by this time and I'm trying to play it cool saying that I'm having a problem with my phone and she's asking me to bring her phone back. I go bring back her phone and she asks me if everything is okay and I'm like yeah. Figured it out. And I walk back into the living room. From there I'm going through this video that I sent myself and reading just months worth of filth. My son no longer lives in the house with us, he lives with his buddies in a condo downtown, so I thought my wife was alone in the evenings while I was working. Nope. This guy, Craig, would come over and they'd have their way with each other while I was at work. Not only that, but he's even snuck over while I've been asleep in bed. This was also rough to read. I ended up finding out Craig's last name from his Instagram page because she follows him on Instagram. Which, by the way, they send each other sexy memes and lingerie ads and what have you on there too. From there I look up Craig and quickly find that he's an attorney for a firm that my wife does work for. He started in March of last year. He looked like a pretty young guy. Maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. I saw red. I went back to the screen recording and went through it slowly. It looks like she broke the news to Craig that she'd be working from home around the same time she told me. She was upset about the fact that she wasn't going to see him during the week at all. This looked earlier on in whatever sort of thing they had going on, but from there it quickly progressed because he said that he'd have to take her out for drinks and they could catch up there. Then shortly after I started working nights and extra shifts, she told him that he could come over for lunch or start coming over because her husband, aka me, was sleeping, but that they'd have to be quiet. I was sick to my stomach reading this. Now I'm here. It's been a few days since D-Day and I'm trying to think of my next move, but I just wanted to write this out and see if anyone has some good advice out there. I really don't want to get screwed in this. I mean, my wife works for law firms and knows her shit and knows people who can really take everything from me. I just have to be careful here. This whole thing just has me really fucked up. Update 1. I met with a lawyer. Before I get into that, I just wanted to give a thanks to everyone who reached out and lent some advice and some tough love. I needed to hear all of it. So yeah, I met with a lawyer. First off, I ended up calling my brother and telling him what else I found, and he's been a really great support system through all of this. He actually reminded me of the friends that my STBX and I made through her work. It's a husband and wife who run their own firm. My STBX used to do some consulting for them a few years back. They were close enough that they would come over for dinner every now and again, and we went out for dinner a couple of different times, and maybe a Christmas party here and there, but we ended up not seeing or hearing from them too much after my STBX's contract ended with their firm, which was maybe a year ago. My brother encouraged me to reach out and said that I just needed to be honest with them. He said that if my STBX was good enough to work for them, it meant they were good at what they did. He was right. So I reached out to the husband and told him exactly what was happening, but asked that he keep this just between the two of us because I didn't truly know the relationship that my STVX had with the wife still, and if they were close, I didn't want to risk her finding out. Anyways, he got back to me right away and basically laid everything out for me. He told me to send him the video of the text thread between her and Craig. He said send him copies of financial documents, account statements, and whatever else. He told me to open up separate accounts that I should start depositing my money into and try to take out money here and there from our joint accounts until things go down, but to not make it suspicious. He said since our son is 19 and living on his own, I don't have to worry about custody or anything like that. And said that once the papers are served to her, to consider living arrangements and who's going where or who's staying where. I told him I wanted to keep the house. He said just not to discuss divorce details or badmouth her or anything like that. I haven't named names other than Craig, so I feel like we're good here. She doesn't even know what Reddit is, as far as I know. But yeah, so the papers are getting made up. My wife makes significantly more money than I do. He said I may be entitled to alimony or spousal support. We have a few investments, but those were actually made separately and she can't take any of mine and I'm not entitled to any of hers. We don't actually have any debts either. She paid off her student loan long ago and I didn't have any loans like that. The biggest thing we own together is our house, which I love. We've lived in it for 12 years and I really don't want to have to get rid of it if I don't have to, but I know I can't afford it on my own. Update 2. The papers were served to my ex. I told her I wasn't leaving the house and that she had to leave. She told me that this was basically her office and I said she can find somewhere else to work. I told her she wasn't working half the time anyways. She was inviting Craig over and fucking him while her own husband lay in bed a few feet away. She tried to threaten me and told me that I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but the threats were empty ones because I knew she was just scared. She knew exactly who my lawyer was. After that, I told her that she had to break the news to our son. I told her that she had to tell him everything and I said he had to hear it from her or else I'd show him the thread of messages between her and Craig. He completely sided with me. My ex tried to apologize to him and he didn't seem to have it. He actually encouraged her to move out of the house to give dad some space. And after that, she packed up and moved out. My son has also been incredible through all of this. He's checking in on me almost every day and we've been seeing a lot more of each other, which has been nice. Here's where things get a little juicy. What I didn't know when I contacted my attorney was that he was one of the best family law attorneys in the country, but my wife apparently knew because she tried to contact me and apologize and take back everything, to which I said it was too late for any of that. What was really interesting was when she said that her and Craig would pay me to be silent because it would ruin their careers. She said that she really messed up and she doesn't know how to fix things but desperately wants to fix things with me. My lawyer actually let me in on something. I guess while my ex was working for him, she started getting cozy with a partner of the firm and leaking information. They found out and they weren't going to have that, so they gracefully dissolved that relationship and then they terminated her contract. So I guess the consulting firm that my ex worked for caught wind of this and wasn't okay with that either. Because they know their way around the legal system. I mean, it's their job. It took them a while to give her a slap on the wrist, but once they did, her punishment was, drumroll please, having her work from home. Basically house arrest. So everything she's been telling me has been a lie. Her firm never went to liquid talent and her contract never ended naturally with my attorney. They terminated it. And it all makes sense now why we stopped hearing from them and seeing them out of nowhere. I just thought that it might have been awkward after the contract ended, but little did I know, it was awkward for an entirely different reason. Update 3, well, we settled. She ended up giving me a large lump sum of money instead of months of alimony, which I used to buy out what was left on the house and then some. So the house is now officially mine, thank goodness. She tried really desperately to get back with me until the very end. So much so that I had to tell my attorney and then communication was moved to only between attorneys. It just got too weird and I wasn't having it and I wasn't interested in getting back together or trying to make things work. Because of what was going down with Craig, she ended up losing that contract with that firm too and now she's under investigation. Rumor is that she's been aiding attorneys and breaching attorney-client privilege. Some colleagues or clients started noticing irregularities in information handling and discrepancies in case details or unusual access to confidential information. There were recorded conversations and messages and emails that were shared without the proper authorization. I guess in layman's terms that means she knew things she shouldn't have and then told that to attorneys for the benefit of their case. So now a formal investigation was launched to the State Bar Association for breach of attorney-client privilege and other violations. But that's not the best part. This all traveled within the legal community, which led to rumors about different practices, involvement in unethical practices. It's just a giant fuckbaggery of shit. But I'm laughing. She did it to herself. I'm out of there and I have my house and the best son a father could ever ask for. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Daughter cut me off for 17 years after my affair. She called to reconnect, but I refused. Now I have apologized and she's visiting with my grandkid before I move overseas. I am not sure if going to provide some background. I am in my 60s now. I was married to my ex-wife, and we had a daughter. Our marriage was going through its ups and downs, but I was really close with our daughter. But as our marriage was going through its difficulties, I made a huge mistake I still regret to this day. I started having an affair with my coworker. She was in a violent, physically abusive relationship at home. We became friends at work, and things just escalated from there. She got an out from me, she got the support she needed to file for divorce from her husband, who is currently in jail now. The affair went nowhere and we called it off shortly after, but I was glad that she got off her abusive relationship and that she was safe. But when my ex-wife found out about the affair, things expectedly didn't go well. She lashed out and said a lot of horrible things about me to our daughter, who was 15 at the time. I admitted full fault with the affair, but even after the divorce, I sensed that the distance between me and my daughter was growing, until one day, my daughter said she wasn't going to speak with me anymore, and she was going to cut me off from her life forever. That was the most painful thing anyone had ever said to me. I begged her to please reconsider. I still remember that day. But time passed on. My daughter kept her word, and after trying to connect with her for the first year, I gave up. I found out from one of my mutual friends that my ex-wife married a great guy. I was happy because I was hoping that would remove the hatred from my ex-wife and my ex-wife would advise our daughter to at least rekindle a relationship with me. But that never happened. I moved states a year later. I am at peace now, but still have some aching sadness. I have retired. Both my parents have passed away. My brother passed away tragically a couple of years ago. To be honest, I am waiting for my turn. I have only my dog and my sister left. A couple of hours ago, my daughter called me on my phone. I haven't spoken to her in 17 years. I instantly recognized her voice, but I didn't feel anything. No happiness, no sadness, just indifference. She was crying a lot on the call, and we caught up on life. She's married, and she has a daughter who's now 12. She apologized for cutting off contact, and she says her mom asked her to reconnect with me, as her mom felt guilty about how everything played out. She said she really wanted me to meet her daughter, and her daughter was constantly asking about granddaddy. But I wasn't feeling anything. After we caught up on everything in our life, I told her I don't care about her or her daughter, and to never contact me again. I then hung up. Was I the Comments of spouse 123. Uda, I hate when adults make very bad adult decisions that affect their children and then blame the children when they respond in a very childlike manner. Your daughter was a teenager. That is a rough time for kids even when their home life is stable. You gave her one whole year before you cut bait and gave up on her. Then you moved away. You told your daughter that she wasn't important enough to fight for and she believed you. Now that she is an adult with a child of her own, she has reached out to you and you again told her she wasn't important to you. She now knows she was probably right to cut you out the first time. Captain Kavmayan, she has reached out to you and you again told her she wasn't important to you. It sounds like he's been waiting 17 years to hurt her back and he finally got his wish. Congrats on his small, pathetic victory. He's totally Uda. Mame Dennis 1974, ain't nothing like a deadbeat narcissist claiming to be the one victim in a situation he created for himself. I was helping my company worker G out of an abusive marriage. Wailard, I helped out a coworker out of an abusive marriage and didn't even have to sleep with her. Shocking. Top palpitation 4681, well, it's already been said, but you're the hole. Up. Okay. Punanya, you don't have to be one, though. A lot of time has passed. At least try to meet her halfway. Surely you owe her that much. Dystopian glitter, I'm confused as to how this is even a question for Op. But I guess he doesn't care about anything and is just waiting to die. Alone. How tragic. Update, look, I was extremely drunk last night. The words which came out of my mouth weren't the best, and my comments on my post weren't great either. Seeing how everyone said I was the I decided to call my daughter again an hour ago. I didn't really expect her to pick up the call but she picked up immediately. I apologized for last night, and she said there was no need to apologize. I then sent her a link to this Reddit post on messages, and told her I know I was the and thousands said so. She again said I wasn't the She started crying again. I told her she's free to come to my house anytime the next 4 months, because after that I will be leaving the country with my sister and our dog. Our parents left us a nice farmhouse in their home country, and we will be spending the rest of our lives there. I sent her my address on messages, and my daughter said she'd come with her husband and her daughter by end of next week. She asked if she was welcome to stay there for multiple days, and I told her she could stay for however long she wanted, as our house was spacious enough. Comments, the Doctor 49, just saw the update and good shit man, I hope things work out for you and don't be hard on yourself. Life happens and sometimes things are out of our control, but I'm super glad you and your daughter have rekindled your relationship and I hope it all turns out great for you. Maybe you're not an hole after all. Life's hard sometimes and we all make emotional choices sometimes. Be well up.